Welcome to Petaluma's Church of Christ Midweek Bible Study. I am George. We're going to be in Mark chapter 12, and we're going to look at verses 38 through 44. I'm glad that you joined us on YouTube for this study. So in Mark chapter 12, verse 38, we find Jesus teaching, and this is what his teaching is. It says, in his teaching, he was saying, "Beware of the scribes who like to walk around in long robes and like respectful greetings in the marketplace, and chief seats in the synagogues, and places of honor at banquets, who devour widows' houses, and for appearance sake offer long prayers. These will receive greater condemnation." And he sat down opposite the treasury and began observing how the people were putting money into the treasury, and many rich people were putting in large sums. A poor widow came and put in 2 small copper coins, which amount to a cent. And calling his disciples to him, he said to them, "Truly I say to you, this poor widow put in more than all the contributions in the treasury, for they all put in out of their surplus. But she, out of her poverty, put in all that she owned all that she had to live on." And so we have here the story of the widow's mite. And it's a story of a poor woman who gave all that she had to the temple treasury. And it's a lesson for us about having open-handed generosity, placing one's trust fully in God. And it's a story that we need to hear from time to time because it's an encouragement to live fully and generously. The widow's contribution in monetary terms is tiny, right? It's only a penny. It's a copper coins. It's a cent, right? It's not much, but yet her gift would place her high on the roster of true generosity because she gave out of her poverty rather than out of her abundance. But this is not only true in the material sense. This woman could have not given as she did had she not had abundance of love for God and trust in God and trusting God's providence for her life. And there's a story in the book of 1 Kings in the Old Testament that echoes this story well. And so when we see poor widows in Scripture, they occupy this precious place. And we see this precarious place that they occupy within the Middle Eastern culture, both in the Old Testament and the New Testament. And of these stories, between these two, Old Testament and the New Testament stories, not much has changed in that time, and even today, in some of the ways, women, especially widows and poor people, are treated because they are without male support, they are without male protection, and they could be, because of that, financially destitute. And I know this kind of maybe hard for our culture to understand because we're not a patriotic society, but we're an egalitarian society. But this was the truth and the reality for women in the Old Testament and Middle Eastern culture and the New Testament, and even in a lot of cultures today that still have that structure without having male support protection for them. And we don't know if the widow who gave her half a penny to the temple treasury had children to feed, if she was a young widow or an older widow. But we do know that the widow that fed the prophet Elijah she had a child. She was about to prepare a final meal before she and her son gave themselves up to starvation. And when the prophet begged her to share her meal with him, what he could do was assure her, as he told her, "Don't be afraid. The Lord will take care of you." Now, so often in Scripture, we encounter poor widows and we encounter orphans. And these are unprotected people who are forced to live on these edges of society. And it was for the Christian destitute of this group that the first deacons were set apart of to provide in the early church. When we look at the book of Acts, that certain widows weren't being served and weren't getting meals like other widows were within the early church. And so we translate these widow stories into modern times. It would be maybe the welfare mother who fed the prophet. It would be the homeless person who gave all that they had to the church for as a contribution. Now, several years ago, there was a story that made some headlines and in the news. It was about an elderly lady in Biloxi, Mississippi, who did laundry for a living. She had lived a lifetime of frugal living and careful saving. And in that time and in that saving, she established a scholarship at a local university to enable poor African Americans to achieve a college education. She had always lived well below the poverty line. She never owned an air conditioner. She never owned a television or any other modern conveniences, and had washed other people's dirty clothes for very little wages all of her life. And for years, she dreamed of doing something significant so that others would be able to have a better life than she had, what she knew, and she knew education would be the key. Now, this story in the Gospel of Mark is the sort of text where one might hear to encourage, where we could encourage pledging a contribution or instructing about tithing. But I would like us to listen to it in another way and think about it in another way. When we look in Scripture at the stories of the rich young ruler or the scribe seeking the greatest commandment when they come to Jesus, we have heard Scripture instructing us to love God above all else and to place our trust in God and not into earthly things. Basically, what Jesus is teaching in that is for us to choose life and choose life in God. So many of us do not choose life, and we refuse to do so because we're afraid. We don't give of ourselves because we are afraid that there might not be enough. So we hold on to what we have. We work hard to accumulate more, but we don't ever have enough. What we do have doesn't satisfy, no matter how much that we have. And poverty is a grim, unrelenting reality in our wealthy nation. People are asking themselves anxious questions. If at midlife, am I secure enough in my career? If I choose to have children now, do I need to give up my job? So, people are asking themselves these questions. Am I going to have enough money in my old age if I start a family? Or can I really give more of what I have to make the world to be a better place and still have enough for myself? Because they're not sure, they are afraid to act. And if fear is powering the greed that is destroying the world, imagine what fear may be doing in your own life. How may it be holding you back or causing you to live in ways that are destructive to yourself and rob you of your full potential of being a human being? Now, there's a story of a young man who had a major heart defect when he was born. It was discovered at birth. The family physicians told his parents that he would not live into adulthood. But like a lot of physicians' diagnosis of things that are going to happen way in the future, it proved to be wrong. He did grow up. He did grow up into adulthood, and he fell in love with a woman and married her. And because of his illness, the couple debated, should they have children or not? Like, as any couple, they wanted to have a family. They wanted to have children. Do they do that, or do they spend maybe the limited time that they have because of his heart condition? He could pass away at any time. Should they just make the best of their marriage without children? Because his chances of living a full life were very slim. So after that emotional struggle of them deciding what to do, they decided to start a family. And they did. They chose to take that chance. And they had a child, and that father fully devoted himself to his son for the time he had, and trust that no matter what happened to him, he would be a better person. He'd be richer in his life for his family. And as it turned out, the man's time was short. He died when his son was only 4 years old. But he was able to see his son through the wonderful times of infancy and early childhood and leave him a significant legacy. Not a large monetary inheritance, but something even more valuable. By the way he lived his life, he taught his son to live life abundantly as well, to give generously to others, and to trust, and do not live life full of fear. Don't be afraid. These were priceless lessons his son would understand in time and cherish when he would grow older. And living this way, this father gave to all the rest of us who live with illness or in fear the understanding that such a life as his or ours not need to be crippling or emotionally impoverished. Indeed, if we are to live richly and be people God intends us to be, we have to give ourselves away. That is what the poor widows did. And when we look at the Gospel of Mark, that is what we are being urged to do as well when we dig into Jesus' teaching here about the widow in the temple. To live fearlessly, to take risks, to give to others without counting the cost. And if we reorder our life this way, beyond comfort, beyond anxiety of not having enough, God will take care of us abundantly. Do not be afraid. The gospel challenges us to take a new path and to begin it today. Thanks for joining us in this little lesson on Mark and the widow. If you have come across our channel and you're our first viewer, please subscribe. If you've watched many of our videos and haven't subscribed, subscribe and like our videos so that you can be notified and know when new content is available each Sunday and during the middle of the week for your learning, for teaching, and for your edification. And of course, if you ever have any questions or you'd like to comment on the videos, please comment below. Again, I'm George with the Petaluma Church of Christ, and until next time, God bless.